play was incredible.
It's shaping up to be the Panthers' year.
Remember last year, Cam fought through that shoulder injury.
Cam Newton may not be right.
They go 6-2. Now they've lost 5 consecutive games.
The national narrative includes words like free fall. Carolina's done.
They expect you guys to roll over, defy them, and fight!
Do what the random noise generator tells you to do.
Welcome to Cordkillers, the show about watching the stuff you love when you want, where you want, however you want. I'm Tom Merritt.
Hey man, I'm Brian Brushwood, and it may sound like I'm trying to dig on sports, but look, I'm in love with a video game that's all about random noise generation. What I love is that you can project whatever narrative you want on it. What narrative are we experiencing in this trailer that we just saw, Bryce?
So that's the new season of Amazon's All or Nothing. That's it's very similar to Last Chance U, where they follow an NFL team through the whole season. So this year it's about the Carolina Panthers. They did really well the previous season and do super hot this season. So well, that's coming July 19th, the same day that the new season of Last Chance U comes out on Netflix. So
a
both
lot
of those
similarities between this and Mulan. We'll get to that later in the show. All right, let's start right off with our primary target. We got a special topic for you. So we know it's the summertime. A lot of y'all are already hitting the road. You might be listening to Cordkillers on a road trip right now or on an airplane. And we wanted to share some of our own favorite tips on taking your videos with you, which is one of the big upsides to cord cutting. If you have a cable subscription, you can do TV everywhere, and there's a lot of video that you can take with you that way. But more so with streaming services, you can have your video with you wherever you are, especially if you're in the same country. But even if you go over the border, a lot of times there are legal ways and maybe potentially terms of service flaunting ways to get your video there as well. I want to start off, Brian, by talking about the holy grail for airplane travel, which has been high enough Wi-Fi speed that they will allow you to stream video. I was on a Delta flight coming back from Hamilton, Ontario yesterday, and my connection out of Detroit had the new high-speed tier that says you are allowed to stream video like Netflix and HBO.
What's funny is like the times that I've experienced that, I'm not interested in Netflix or HBO. It's always like YouTube. That's the one that always gets me. And I'm shocked to realize how much of my viewing time actually is spent in that free environment normally reserved for children. I'm equally surprised that this is not a case where they have a server right there on the plane, but instead was it a lie?
So this is the first time I have seen this on a Delta flight, and I thought, oh, this is great. I'm going to watch a baseball game. So I fire up my MLB app, and I go in. And by the way, I'm using a phone over Wi-Fi, so I'm probably getting a lower bitrate video because they'll adapt that usually. Yeah. Just doesn't work. Like it verifies. First I'm like, I wonder if I'm going to get blacked out because like, where does it think I am? But it's like, no, yeah, your viewing location is fine. You can watch this, no problem. And then as soon as the video tried to start, it just said unexpected error. So I went over to PlayStation View. I'm like, maybe I'll check out what's streaming on PlayStation View. Maybe watch a little Wimbledon. I think the Women's World Cup was already wrapped up by then, but I was like, let's see. PlayStation View, churned, never loaded, churn. Netflix, on the other hand, went and launched an episode of Sabrina, popped right up, started streaming, no problem.
So is this
HBO
a case?
Went over, got Chernobyl, popped right up, just started streaming, no problem.
Is this a case where they're full on just fibbing and they actually have local copies that you're experiencing? Or is it a case where these are greenlit and other ones are blocked out?
Got to be one of the two. Now, I did a speed test. You do have higher speeds on that service that I was using. So they're not lying about that because they charge you more. They charge you $10 for an hour versus $5 for an hour for the older version of the Wi-Fi. So that is working. But I wonder, like, are there things cached? Because I know Netflix has wanted to do that with airplanes in the past. Or is it a whitelist situation where they know that Netflix always has a lot of copies of its stuff really close to the point that it's serving from, so they can whitelist that and it'll work well, whereas everything else just kind of is a pot shot, so they just don't even bother. Like, is it that they're blacklisting PlayStation View and MLB, or is it just that they've fine-tuned everything to stream Netflix and HBO really well and not anything else?
I feel like it's got to be the latter, right? Because for the latter, what you could do is, those are big enough institutions that Delta could work out a deal, say, how do we make sure that people have a good experience when they try to watch Game of Thrones? And they say, well, you know what? We got this one server. Why don't we just dedicate that to you guys and you get to go? We saw a similar thing, man, 7 or 8 years ago now, where depending on your cable provider, you would have difficulty consistently getting YouTube streams, and we actually figured out that you were better off running it through a VPN.
Yeah, because it had to do with the way the deals for transit of video are made on the back end, and when you VPN, you basically force the video to take a different route to get to you than it does in the paid-for transit route.
Feels like some amount of that almost certainly would happen, especially now. Did you notice a particularly heavy amount of branding, like for HBO or Netflix on there?
No,
you just happen to notice that those are the ones that work.
The description said, this is a higher speed. You will be able to do more faster and stream video like Netflix and HBO, just in normal text.
Man, well, I guess this is where we kick it out to the fans. If anybody has some insider sauce on this,
if
let
you
us know.
Like we all got speculations and we just went through a lot of them, and that's fine too. But we really want is like, I work on this stuff. Yeah. Here's what they're doing. Like that would be the juice.
You didn't get far enough into the teching things out to actually try running a VPN, did you? Because
I've done that before. You could do on the lower speed connections. You could do that and actually get stuff to work. So I was like, well, I already know that will change it. I didn't want to pollute the science of it by doing that.
Yeah, that as a matter of fact, and I think it was a couple of years ago, I was talking about how we launched a new Modern Rogue video and I wanted to be able to respond to comments, but the YouTube app wouldn't function at all. This is like a trans-Pacific flight.
They were probably blocking it.
Yeah, and so until I ran NordVPN, and then I was able to
at least tell what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, interesting. Now, you know what? I should have done that now that you mention it, to see if PlayStation View worked that way, whether it was actually being blocked or not. But I didn't. I did. I mentioned I tried watching Chernobyl on the plane. I did that just to see if HBO would work. I had already watched our episode of Chernobyl while sitting in the Toronto airport. And the way I did that was to fire up ExpressVPN and connect it to an LA server, and it worked like a dream over airport Wi-Fi. Like it was, actually, I wasn't even on the Wi-Fi. Now that I think about it, I was just on LTE. I was using T-Mobile's free roaming to get LTE service from some Canadian ISP. And then I was using ExpressVPN to make sure that HBO would stream me my video to me in the Toronto airport, because I can't download the HBO stuff. I downloaded Stranger Things to watch on the plane ride in, because I did, and I also didn't have that special high-speed Wi-Fi connection. So that worked great. Like being able to download stuff from Stars and Netflix, et cetera, works wonderfully. But HBO, unless you get the new Apple TV channels version of HBO, that's the only way to download an HBO show legally to watch ahead of time. So I was stunned just how good that has gotten. Because it used to be when you pop on a VPN for video streaming, it was a little bit of a catch as catch can. Like it might work fine, it might work with some stutters, it might not work at all. You just never do.
Yeah. So your LTE service, is there a bandwidth cap on there? Do you have to worry about hitting any of that? So I'm about a year and change into. I'm over on AT&T. I got to tell you, man, it has been so good for the last year and change that I strongly advised my in-laws when they moved to the new place. They're paying like $100 and change for some kind of satellite rural internet thing, and they're getting like barely over a megabit or whatever. And it's like I was like, look at your phone. How many bars do you have? Does it have the letters LTE? And I was like, if you will give me 20 minutes, I will explain to you how your phone will be your internet service for your one computer that you have in the house.
Well, and the carriers are going to start marketing 5G service as that. They're going to say,
and,
like,
as well they should.
We don't need to run a line to your house. You'll get broad, the home level broadband service. So,
we're kind of already there in so many ways. And I understand that there's somebody out there that is howling and has fists raised because they live in a rural area and they're still screaming about bandwidth. Caps
I'll just mention my sister who lives on a farm outside of Greenville, Illinois, and no, her service is. It's LTE outside and 3G inside, and it's not better than the DSL she can get because she's close enough to the city to be able to get a DSL node these days. Although she didn't used to. She had to get a wireless microwave connection. So it just depends on where you are. And not all rural installations are the same. But if your parents are lucky enough to be in an area where they can get LTE, they absolutely should. That should be their internet connection.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it was just too weird of an idea for them, and so they, immediately signed like a 20-year contract or whatever. But it is interesting to me that this was like the hot button topic that we would constantly talk about 8 years ago, and nowadays it's kind of a non-issue. Like here you are, you have the luxury of LTE being so ubiquitous and fast, and we're not even to 5G yet, but that you're able to run it through a VPN on top of that and be able to get quality video streaming on there.
No, it's crazy. I was not able to get Major League Baseball to work over. What was it? Oh, no, it was PlayStation View. For some reason, PlayStation View didn't want to stream over the VPN. And I think it may have been checking my GPS location to make sure I was still in the US and then was like, no, you're not. That's one of the downsides of VPNing to get around geo-blocks on a phone. Some apps like the Major League Baseball app are smart enough to look at your GPS, not your IP address, because an IP address isn't actually a location. That's why VPN works for that. And so there will be occasional geo-blocking issues with that, depending on where you're going. Also, Netflix expires your downloads. So you have to, if you're going on a longer trip, you may have to take that into account. You don't want to download things too early or they might expire before your trip's over. Stars apparently doesn't. I went in to download The Rook before my flight back, and I noticed that I still had episodes of Counterpoint that I had downloaded for flights last year.
Counterpart,
sorry, yeah.
Although Counterpoint, I should have had a better joke.
You should have had a Counterpoint. Counterpoint is the name is Counterpart.
It's interesting because we're talking about apps, and apps certainly have permission or theoretically it's baked into the app that it's entitled to know where physically your GPS says you are. But then the counterpoint I was thinking of was why not, log in through a browser. But nowadays, and this is my white whale that I'm chasing, is we've talked previously about how I want the cable version package of news consumption, right? I would love it if I could just pay a flat fee and have access to all news things. So instead, it's like you figure out all these dumb workarounds. It's like when Google News serves up a Washington Post thing, that likely if you have a VPN on and you right click and it's early in the month that and you go incognito mode, it'll let you see it.
No, I will do the I'm out of my free articles on Firefox. I will switch to Opera to read this one.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But then increasingly, I'm seeing a bunch of them saying like, "Whoa, looks like you're in an incognito browser there, are you?" And so now that makes me feel like, the shelf life on that workaround is expiring as well.
Also, I want to have a quick discussion about what screen you should bring. If you're intending to watch your TV while you travel, whether it's in a car, I know some people can't watch TV in a car, but or on a plane, I tend to prefer a tablet for that. I actually didn't bring a tablet on this trip. I just brought my phone and it was fine. It was all right. But a tablet gives you a big enough screen that you feel like you're getting a full experience, where the phone, sometimes you're like, I'm probably not getting the full impact of this. 10-inch, 12-inch, it doesn't matter. I think those are all big enough. They are as big or bigger than the seatback screens you're going to get in most planes. And they don't have the problem of laptops, which are like, what do I do with the keyboard now? Oh, crap, I accidentally hit the keyboard. Because if your tablet has a keyboard, you can pop it off or fold it back. I guess if you have a convertible laptop where you can fold the keyboard away, like a Chromebook or a Yoga, that can be good too. Those tend to be a little bigger and they might be too big for you. So I feel like the ideal thing is a tablet. What about you?
Yeah, I would say it's a luxury that gets you we'll make up a number, 20 or 30% higher fidelity. But as we've talked about before, I'm a big believer that convenience trumps fidelity. So oftentimes, the only time I would bother to take out a tablet to set it up is if I plan to do something else on my phone at the same time. All things being equal, if I just want to watch the thing, I'll just watch the thing, and a phone is give or take. Now, keep in mind, I'm extremely...
I will admit, I freely admit, convenience Biden fidelity for me on this trip, because I was like, I don't want to carry that tablet around. I'm just I'll use my phone, and it was fine. It was good enough.
I have the iPad Mini.
Yep.
And I think it's the perfect mix on sizes, right? Like
especially for like on an airplane, because you've got that not right in front of your face, but just a few inches away.
And they've got the good magnetic, cover stands and all. I think it's great, and they're high resolution, so you're getting a decent size. And and this is almost an outdated thing, but like a lot of video is cut so it'll look good 4:3. So like on Netflix you can full screen it and it'll chop off the sides, but it'll be a little bigger even if you want to try that.
Yeah, and it'll fit in a seat back pocket or in a car in a little side thing where laptops often don't fit in that situation. And on planes, they make you put the laptop in your bag during takeoff and landing anyway. So that's the nice thing about tablets is you can continue to watch, phones too, all the way until landing.
So I've got a quirky question for you. This question, like the fact that we're entering the whole fact that we're discussing what's the best way to watch your content while you're on vacation, and it's all within the context of subscription services. Of course, for me, the shorter answer is, once you quit cable, you have a budget. And so I just tend to buy stuff like I'll buy the whole season of a thing and download it on Amazon. But 7 years ago, the answer would have been obvious. It would have been watch it on a laptop, also pirate it. And now that we're in this age, and keep in mind, part of what's fueling this, and again, we are strongly anti-piracy on this program, but we do acknowledge that it is a thing, and that for at least a chunk of the history of cord cutting, it was the highest quality experience that one could hope for when a lot of companies wouldn't offer alternatives. But is piracy a thing on phones? Given that we have a whole generation of kids whose primary method of interacting with the internet is on their phones, I'm going to assume that the answer is yes to Android devices, but no to iOS devices.
If you have a Plex.
Yeah, I don't think.
But a Plex doesn't run on a phone. Like at some point, a desktop computer is evolved for a Plex.
Yeah.
Brian, I think
I'm saying my daughter. My daughter at the age of 15, armed with only, let's say, a tablet and a phone. My experience at the age of 15, as we all know, I am a reformed pirate, involved a lot of piracy because I was on desktop computers, laptop computers, all that stuff. Sure. Is it a significantly different landscape for folks whose only interface is a mobile device?
No.
No, it's not significantly different?
No, it is not a significantly different landscape. I think the changes in piracy have very little to do with the changes in device type.
Nowadays they're acting more like UI systems. You can download, you can save files, you can bring files into apps, and or even just via YouTube, right?
Right. But the big difference is that there are services that give you what you actually want, which is fast, instant access to high quality videos and so on.
Yeah. I mean, without getting into starting to instruct people on how to do this, yes.
I mean, by the way, this is how you know I'm a reformed pirate. Is I don't know. There was a time I would have known all of these things.
and I don't think it's an Android versus iOS thing either. I think if you really want to do it, there's definitely ways to do it.
Wild. Okay, I didn't even know. I've become an old man, Tom. When did this happen?
I think an interesting sidelight to that question, though, is, what about connectivity? Because where piracy starts to become more alluring for people is when they realize, oh, wait, my Netflix downloads expire, so I have to plan. Oh, wait, HBO doesn't have downloads unless I get it through Apple TV. Oh, wait, am I going to be able to get my PlayStation Vue DVR, my DirecTV Now DVR stuff? Because I don't know if I'll have internet there and I can't watch. That's where it starts to be like, maybe I should just get Plex. And I heard more than once this weekend somebody say, well, I'm technologically savvy, so I just look at Plex first. It's sort of, it's not snotty, but it's sort of the like, well, those of us in the know don't trifle with these restrictions that the systems put on us. But that's still a thing, because it is still, when you're traveling, the most flexible way to do it. I think the reason that doesn't encourage breaking the rules, because if you only need it for traveling, you're not going to probably dive into that world just to get that for traveling purposes. And I don't think people dive into Plex for piracy purposes. I think they dive into Plex for flexibility, because they have legal rips of DVDs that they want to make easily available. And there are then opportunities to do things that may not be respecting of copyright law in there. But there's so much on Plex that you can do now that isn't violating things, and make stuff easy for offline viewing, for watching on the go, and all of that sort of thing.
Well, and many times we've talked about the legal versus ethical side of things. If you ask me, people dive into Plex because they want to be popular. Because you know who's popular? The guy who has an awesome Plex server.
Oh, you want my Plex password?
Yeah, exactly. And what's funny is I'm pretty sure that ethically is the equivalent of just having a big Blu-ray library that you are very liberal about loaning out copies of your
yes
stuff.
And no. There's a physical limit to how many Blu-ray libraries you can loan out, right? When you loan out one of your Blu-rays, you can't loan it out to everybody else at the same time. So there's a scale factor to Plex that you don't have for a Blu-ray.
So let's say in the most generous interpretation of this, let's say that no two people happen to be looking at the same thing at the same time. Outside of that, I think you're totally in the clear ethically, right?
Ethically? Well, maybe not. I don't know. Possibly.
Cordkillers
has
at
nothing to do with
gmail.com.
traveling or watching videos on vacation.
No.
So I'm not sure how much farther down this road I want to go, honestly.
It definitely does to me, because it's only in a traveling situation that I would bother to find out a friend's Plex situation or whatever. Like outside of that's outside of my ecosystem, or in general don't.
To have a proper discussion about the ethics of Plex and sharing requires us to dig into how much of a money drain are you? Are you actually taking money away from artists because you are doing this? Or would you have said, oh, well, I don't know anyone with Plex, I guess I'll buy a couple of these things and therefore put money into the community that pays for people to have jobs, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
Well, man, I can't remember. I think the last time I ever downloaded anything to any of my devices was I think it was over a year ago when we went to Canada, and we just downloaded a full season of The Expanse. And even then, it was one of those last few seconds before takeoff. Hopefully we get the entire episode over LTE type situation.
Yeah, well, that was a couple of things that were different. The first time I took a phone to Canada, not like a smartphone to Canada, I said,
like an old landline that you were just wanting to show off. It had rotary dial on it.
The first time I took my rotary dial phone to Canada, everyone was like, why did you bring that? No, the first time I took a smartphone to Canada, I made lots of plans to go and get a temporary SIM card so that I could pop it in and get high-speed data, because I didn't want to pay for the roaming, and the roaming wasn't very good. And there were other times that I went and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to remember to download all this Stars content before I take off. Oh no, it's so slow to download on this airport connectivity. Neither one of those were a problem. I landed in Toronto and I got a scare because I didn't immediately roam from T-Mobile onto the LTE there, because there wasn't very good connectivity on the runway. And I'm used to like immediately connecting as soon as I land. I was like, oh no, should I have gotten a SIM card? Flashbacks, it's 2009 all over again. No, as soon as we got in the gate, I had full bars and everything was fine from there on out. And then when I was like, oh, I should download a couple of things off these apps before I get on the plane, they downloaded over LTE. I didn't even connect to the airport Wi-Fi. I just downloaded them over LTE, like lickety split. It took 5 minutes. So the entire situation is just getting easier and easier. That said, I still watched 2 movies on the seatback video player.
I'm sorry. We just spent 20 minutes talking about all the Cordkillers way to watch all of the programming. And ultimately, you did it the McDonald's way, which is, this is here.
I watched lots of stuff on my phone. Don't get me wrong. I didn't not watch it. Majority of stuff I watched on my phone. But I watched 2 movies on the seatback because I wanted to charge.
All right, can I confess something? I did the exact same thing when we went to Australia last year.
Yeah.
On the way
It's
back.
like, oh,
In
you know
fact,
what? I'll watch this. That'll charge my phone back up. I'll charge my AirPods up because I had the USB and the electrical outlet, and then I'll be fine.
In fact, even worse, it was stuff I had already seen before. I rewatched old Rick and Morty episodes because, like, well, I don't know, it's right here. Blip, let's go.
See, I find it somewhat hard to concentrate anyway when I'm on a plane, just because there's noise and stuff going on. So I always watch dumber movies for the most part.
Sure. Stuff that doesn't take your full attention.
So that if I miss a part because flight attendant interrupted me or I got distracted, it doesn't matter. So I watched Lego Movie Part 2 and The Meg.
You definitely sent me a text saying, hey, you should play Hearthstone and mainly pay attention to Hearthstone, but have the Meg on while you play Hearthstone. Explain to me where that came from.
Because I'm watching this and I realize, like, you know what? I'm missing large parts of this movie because, you know, they're bringing me a drink or they're, you know, making an announcement or this or that. And yet I'm like, Jason Statham is just fun. Like, this is just a fun movie. And every time it gets your attention and you look up, there's like a mega shark up there. It's just a blast. And I'm like, I bet Brian would enjoy this if he didn't have to pay attention to it, and immediately thought of Hearthstone as your method of distraction of choice.
There was a story over on the Harmontown podcast where Jeff B. Davis, who's of Whose Line Is It Anyway fame, told a story. And I can't remember the exact movie that it happened to me with, but as he told the story, I was like, I have definitely had that happen. He said that he was sitting in his chair. Somebody across the aisle happened to be watching the Pixar movie Coco. So he heard none of the audio. There was no subtitles, but the storytelling is so perfectly visual that by the end of the movie that he's casually glancing over, he was full on crying in tears.
Kidding.
He was there for the entire movie and getting 100% of the emotional experience. And
what a compliment to the cinematography of Coco.
Oh, absolutely.
The animation or whatever. Yeah.
And I wish I could remember the specific movies that I've had a similar experience. But if somebody at home has that, hit us up at cordkillers@gmail.com.
Anything else from you Brian, or you, Bryce, about taking your movies and your TV shows with you?
I've softened on my position early on our show. I used to be really just mad at the idea that you had to buy TV shows that very likely you're only going to watch once. But I've softened on that as my play money budget has increased thanks to not having cable. And so now that I don't mind it, it's like the solution's so simple. Just download it on Amazon. It's there on your phone forever, and you bought it and you have it. And you'll probably never watch it again.
Or iTunes or Google Play, whatever you use. But yeah, then you've got a safe, reliable place to get your stuff that you know is going to work. Then why not?
Yeah.
Offline downloading on Netflix or like podcasts even like that's I do the opposite of you, Brian. I load up 100 different things on my iPad before travel and never get to almost any of them, but just so I have options. Because then even in the hotel, so I don't have to deal with Wi-Fi, I can just have it in airplane mode.
What's funny is that's how I am for audio entertainment. Like I have at any given time literally hundreds of podcasts at the ready, and even then I'm constantly looking for other options. Yeah. But maybe it's just when I'm on a flight, there's something about that ADD aspect where it's like, well, okay, the story part of my brain is engaged in a story. What are the hands part of my brain going to be doing in the meantime?
Sure. The other thing is I'm pretty sure for Netflix, if you download something offline and you say go across country borders, I think if you keep your phone in airplane or your device in airplane mode, you can still watch the videos that you download. But I think you also get access to that country's library. So if, like, say Tom went to Canada and Canada gets a lot of the big non-US things, you could load up on your device while you're in Canada and maybe watch some stuff at home.
Well, you could certainly watch them on the plane, and if you don't want to keep it in airplane mode all the way home, you've at least, because I've done that. I've Star Trek Discovery is on Netflix in the UK, and on a flight back from the UK, I made sure to download that week's episode and watch it on the plane because I knew I wouldn't be able to get it except for on CBS All Access when I got home, which is not downloadable. So
when you're flying over international waters, you can be gambling at the same time as well.
Yeah.
You can
smoke on those
engage in
flights.
insider trading. Who's going to stop you, man?
Hey, you know what? Who's not going to stop us is our bosses. In fact, they're going to do the opposite. They're going to allow us to go. When I looked at that option to stream the video, I knew I had to test it, and I didn't think a second about trying it because thankfully this show is funded by folks at patreon.com/Cordkillers.
Yeah, dude, we say it all the time. You know, we winkingly talk about you guys being our bosses, but we quite literally are doing. We work for you. Our job is to try to stay on top of all of this stuff from a technology standpoint. Hopefully, we bring to you some good artistic projects that you guys dive into and really enjoy. You guys transformed our lives when we went independent about 5-6 years ago, and we would love it if you haven't become a patron already. Head on over to patreon.com/Cordkillers. Every single silly dollar, you will never notice it. You will never notice it on your credit card bill at the end of the month, but you will always feel the smug satisfaction of knowing that you are an important and better person than everyone else because you're changing our life. Thank you so much to all of the bosses at patreon.com/Cordkillers.
All right, let's talk about how to watch. So I feel like we're going to get a lot more of these things in the next couple of years as the digital services start to mature and they think, well, we can do things that you couldn't do on a black box that was connected to you, by a monopolistic cable company. And Hulu is trying one called a shuffle option for Seinfeld. Seinfeld has a loose story arc, but each episode is pretty much standalone. And if people like Seinfeld, a lot of times they just keep rewatching them, even though they've seen them before. So there is now a button on the Apple TV app for Hulu. It's only on Apple TV. Hulu says they'll consider adding it to others. But there is a button labeled yada, 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 that if you click, it will start a playlist of 180 Seinfeld episodes in random order.
I think this was designed to be a cute thing for people like us to talk about. I think secretly, this is a very powerful option that is very, very good. I think I want to see more of the random buttons on everything. That's actually a feature, once we got, in the hundreds of articles on the Modern Rogue, like at some point you're like, that was fun. Just give me another of whatever it is. And I like it being, I think that I hate decision making. I hate that feels like work to me. And, but I know, let's say I hate decisions, but I like Seinfeld. This is the perfect button. I hate decisions, but I like Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Perfect button. I think that they are. I don't like the overly adorable yada 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 thing tie-in, whatever. But the point is,
I mean, maybe if I'm not a huge Seinfeld fan, I like it enough. But maybe if I was, that would tickle my fancy more.
I guess I don't know. I mean, I've watched all the Seinfeld episodes, and it doesn't really do much for me. But I do think that there's something to this. That the decision to abdicate decision making, I think, is incredibly potent and powerful. And
I think you're right, because they're like, retweet this and we'll consider adding it to other platforms. So they're obviously like some kind of like viral marketing strategy at play. But just give me this with multiple options. Like, I choose the science fiction television show genre, shuffle. I don't even know what series I'm going to get. Just show me stuff. Or the Star Trek option, shuffle. Or movies. All the movies that I own on Movies Anywhere, shuffle. Like, just give me this, like you say, abdication of decision. I know I want to watch this flavor. I don't want to have to comb through a library and figure out which one of that flavor I want to pick. Just start showing me stuff.
You know what's really funny is Google already nailed this, but they did it in the wrong format. If I'm ever searching for a thing, then I want to make sure I'm getting the thing that I'm searching for. So while it was always cute that they had the I'm feeling lucky button on there, have you ever used that? Have you ever typed in a thing and just gone with "I'm feeling lucky"?
I mean, yes, I have, but more as a like, what does that button do? Oh, that's right.
Right. And then what's the first thing? Once you go there, you're like, okay, was this the best fit? And then you immediately back up and do it again. So I think there's something to that button, but it's like, imagine Hulu, where of course you maybe don't want to have to make a decision or find something. What if there was just a button instead of "I'm feeling lucky"? It says, "Do you trust me?" And then it's like, yeah, sure. Right now I'm feeling like I trust you. Go. What do you got?
Yeah.
And then you're in.
I wonder actually if AI, like actual machine learning that gets good at pattern matching, would make this more attractive to people, where it says, look, I know what kind of stuff you want. I'm going to ask you 2 questions and then I'm going to show you something, because I have seen what people like to watch across, millions and millions of databases. And so I have a really good idea. That's the kind of thing machine learning is good at.
So I don't know if we've talked about it on this show, but in his book Sapiens, Harari writes about the difference, or maybe it's Homo Deus is what it is. He talks about artificially intelligent organisms in terms of sovereigns and oracles. So, and it blurs between the two. So right now, Google is an oracle. You're like, bring me the thing, and it brings you the thing, right? But what if Google as a sovereign was, think about this. Imagine Stranger Things season 4 is going to come out, and you have an option 3 months before it comes out to click a button and say, you can either, when it comes out, watch the show, or you could click this button, and for the next 3 months, very carefully placed nudges will happen in your search results, in the pop-up ads, and everything that'll get you thinking about certain topics. And as a result, our marketing shows us, our testing shows that you will have about a 50% more exciting, more amazing time, because what will feel like serendipity will in fact be engineered. Would you be for that? Would you subscribe to that? Would you say, yes, go ahead and guide my thoughts? Because really what I'm describing in is sort of a maximized version of the Alamo Drafthouse pre-show, where it's like, hey, you're about to watch this movie. We've already seen the movie. Probably going into Batman Begins or Batman whatever, you probably should know who the Scarecrow is, although we're not going to tell you that. We're just going to be looking like we're showing you old cartoons that happen to have the Scarecrow. But then when the movie starts, you'll be glad that you learned all of that going into it. What about that in a long con kind of situation?
Yeah, no, I think that's a cool idea. That's a different idea than what I was talking about, of course. But I love that idea of saying, hey, I want to sign up for the, get pumped about Stranger Things. I'm pumped about Stranger Things. Help me, get even more excited. Give me nuggets that'll help me enjoy it more. Yeah, I'm all into that. I don't even think you need machine learning to do that, to be honest. I mean, that might be something for machine learning, but I think it's better as a curated experience. The machine learning aspect could figure out where to put it so that it naturally, quote unquote, shows up. But I almost think the Alamo Drafthouse guy or lady who picks things would be better at programming that, because you don't need pattern matching to do that. Whereas what I'm talking about, which is I know what kind of things you like, you don't know what to watch, but I do know what you want to watch. I think that's the thing that ML can handle.
Yeah.
These are good. These are good things, folks. Send us your ideas of what kind of new weird features you'd like to see streaming services try. Because
because otherwise we have to listen to Brian's crazy ideas.
No, because you've got me thinking like Star Wars Episode 9. If I could sign up right now for your service and I knew it was good and it would just start giving me interesting things in a way that isn't a spoiler, right? I won't be able to play detective and go, oh, you're showing me this because Rey's mom is Mon Mothma or whatever.
Or imagine even in little ways, like your Google News feed, it says, here's an article you should read. It's about the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand. And you're like, well, this is a really interesting article. I'm not sure how I got here, but I'm glad I know about it. And then later on, there's another article about like hostile takeover.
I would probably be able to tell like, oh, that I wouldn't normally get that. That must be Star Wars related.
Well,
that must be because I signed up for the Stranger
well,
Things. But I'm fine with that. So I'd be okay if they even just put a flag on it and said, here's your recommended article today. And I'm like, oh, cool. I got to read that.
Well, and I suppose theoretically, let's say even if you knew that it was part of a long-term priming, we'll call it a priming service, right?
Yeah.
But theoretically, you would have 7 or 8 shows that you were priming yourself for, so you wouldn't know whether this is Matrix 7, the Return, the Matrix Rises Again, or the Phantom Menace moves in with your mom.
Phantom Menace moves in with your mom is my favorite mashup. All right, let's talk about what to watch in Under Surveillance.
I like this, Terry. It's all about location.
Under Surveillance.
The first trailer for the live-action Mulan is out, and it looks like a serious Mulan legend retelling, more than a remake of the animated movie. For instance, there's no dragon, no songs yet. There's some themes in the background that are familiar, but there was no actual singing in the trailer. Mulan comes to theaters on March 27th. What do you think, Brian?
Am I remembering this right? Mulan got a little bit of guff for trivializing a fairly serious war or experience over in China.
I mean, you could just say, like, am I remembering this right? A movie got guff for being the movie that it was.
Well,
yes.
Specifically, like
Mulan has come under some criticism. Again, it's pretty much every Disney movie has come under criticism for this, but Mulan came under criticism for taking an ancient legend and retelling it in sort of a funny way, which some people felt was disrespectful. I think I'm putting that right. I don't claim to be an expert on it, but yeah, you're right. It got some criticism.
All of which is to tee up my real question is does your gut say that this is like a response to that, like sort of a?
Well, I mean, okay, you can decide to interpret it as a response to that, or you can decide to look at it as, here's a different approach to telling the Mulan tale. I wonder if I will like this one.
Yeah, you're right. There's no way for me to even phrase the question in a way that doesn't project some kind of value judgment on it. I guess, and of course, no decision is made in that simplistic of a format. There's a million reasons. I just think they want to bring back the Szechuan sauce.
Hopefully. I mean, really, I think that's what we're all concerned about here. It's like, okay, great. You have a better storytelling. You have an all Chinese cast this time. That's we're fully behind this. Where's the Szechuan sauce?
Sure.
Yeah. I think the movie looks good. People can get lost going down the rabbit hole of like, well, are they changing it because reasons, or why aren't they singing? Where's my Eddie Murphy drag? Did Eddie Murphy turn down the role? Like, okay, if that's fun for you, do it. But this looks like a really good movie if you just leave all of that behind at the door, at least so far anyway.
And we've talked about this before. We know that Disney is excellent stewards of those properties. So I have no doubt that it'll be an amazing movie.
What is much less controversial, the Little Mermaid live remake has cast Halle Bailey, not Halle Berry. Halle Bailey as Ariel, and she is one half of the sister duo Chloe and Halle. She is a co-star on the Grownish television series, a spinoff from Blackish. This remake will most definitely include songs. More casting announcements coming, but the odds are on Melissa McCarthy as Ursula and Awkwafina voicing Scuttle. I think this is a fantastic choice, simply because this lady can sing, and as she is shown on Grownish, she can act.
100%, all in.
I think it's interesting that autocorrect changed Grownish to Grownfish.
I rather liked what was Melissa McCarthy as Ursula autocorrected to Ursine or something.
Yeah, took a little mental gymnastics for me to read this properly, but I actually think Halle Bailey is talented, and if you don't know her, that's not a surprise. She's probably just not in the things that you like to watch, but you want somebody to play Ariel because this will be a musical who can sing those songs, and she can. And it's kind of along the lines of the woman they cast in Aladdin as Jasmine, just one of those young stars who can sing coming up.
Yeah. So let's talk about the trailer for the Whodunit Knives Out.
All right. Rian Johnson has a movie come out. It's his first movie since Last Jedi called Knives Out. The trailer hit theaters ahead of Spider-Man. That's where I saw it, in front of the Spider-Man Far From Home. Of course, you could see it online. Daniel Craig and Lakeith Stanfield play detectives investigating the murder of an 85-year-old man played by Christopher Plummer. The movie is described by Ryan Johnson as Alfred Hitchcock meets Agatha Christie. Also stars Toni Collette, Anna de Armas, Jamie Lee Curtis, Don Johnson, Michael Shannon, Catherine Langford, and Jaden Martell, coming out November 27th.
I feel like after watching this trailer that they're just straight up doing Clue. I feel like it's going to be quaint and small, and the cast will be amazing, and the chemistry will be amazing. But it's not. This doesn't feel like a blockbuster to me. But I love Ryan Johnson, and everything about this. It seems fun.
It's interesting too, because we've talked a lot about how comedy has kind of become a digital genre, right? People will watch comedies on Netflix that they would not go to see in the movie theater anymore. And this seems like an attempt to say, yeah, but what if we got Ryan Johnson to make Clue? What if we got Ryan Johnson to do your whodunit for you?
I mean,
I'll admit the trailer
honest,
got me interested. Like, I love a whodunit, and whodunits are always on rails. It's fun to try to guess who the killer is, but there's a killer. It's one of the people. It's there are certain things that are not surprises here, but it can be really entertaining nonetheless.
Not gonna lie, saw this trailer and thought, oh, that's gonna be great when it's on Netflix. That's where I ended up.
I don't know if this will pull me into the theater. It's a really good point.
I don't think it will for me,
because seeing the trailer in front of Spider-Man definitely made me appreciate, like, oh, this looks good on the big screen. I don't know if that's enough.
Yep.
Yeah. Amazon Prime Video will run a 6-part series on soccer called This Is Football, starting August 2nd. The documentary series is produced by former Disney and Fox chairman Joe Roth, who's also a owner of the Seattle soccer team. It's also co-produced by Starbucks, Barbarian's rising producer October Films, and Spanish firm Brutal Media. This Is Football is written and co-created by journalist and author John Carlin.
Sports. Yeah. Sounds great.
Amazon Prime Video getting the sports on.
Yeah.
Like football. And finally, a new trailer for Maleficent, Mistress of Evil is out. Angelina Jolie is back, challenged by a new character played by Michelle Pfeiffer. Basically, from the trailer, it looks like Aurora wants to get married and Maleficent doesn't like that much. Coming on October 18th.
There was a first movie of this, right?
Yes.
That I didn't see. Was it good?
Sequel.
Yeah. Is it good? Should I watch it?
I never saw the first one. I heard some people saying, wait a minute.
I did not.
Didn't the first one just wrap up the story?
Yeah. I didn't see it, but it seems like, what more do you tell in a Cinderella adjacent story?
She gets swept up, and there's some graphite that needs to be cleaned up.
Well,
now she thought she was out, but she has to get back in.
The trailer says go beyond the fairy tale, which means we wrote new stuff.
Yeah, okay.
Did that work very well for Snow White?
So Snow White and the Huntsman you're talking about?
Huntsman had its own problems.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, the trailer looked good. It looks pretty, and like if you just want like a fun fantasy movie to sit back and enjoy, this would probably be a good one. But yeah, I don't know that I don't know, maybe there's some Maleficent fan people out there that'll flock into the studio. I might watch it though because it just looks like a good escape movie.
Depends on whether or not you have a flight to Canada.
Yeah, you kind of read my mind there. I'm like, and it'll probably be on an airplane. All right, let's talk about what we've had our eyes on.
Hey, I continue to show old movies to my 11-year-old daughter, and in this case, I got all 3 of my daughters to sit down and watch all of Pleasantville with Tobey Maguire and Reese Witherspoon. Man, that movie really holds up. It was quaint when I saw it in the theater. Thought it was great now that I have the context of being 20 years older and having kids and whatnot. And at the time, and I don't know if it's just because I was younger, I was like, oh, I get it. They're doing like a old school racism thing. But in the increasingly politically, racially charged environments of 2019, it was much more potent. And it's a much better movie than I dared hope. Also, I was really glad that we had already had certain sex talks with our children before an important plot point causes a tree to burst into flames. But Pleasantville is great. Oh, have you not seen it?
I've not seen Pleasantville, so that's...
There's a moment of self-discovery.
I put two and two together.
Okay, all right.
I put two and two together
Fine.
on that one.
All right.
Pleasantville, now with more relevancy to current events.
It's great, though.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I saw Stranger Things in a vacuum of only me and my wife watching it. We burned through it and loved it, and apparently that's wrong. So I don't have much more to say about that. But
the feedback I've heard, and of course I've not seen it, so I can't accidentally spoil anything. But man, sounds like a lot of people didn't like it. But you guys, I know my 11-year-old loved it. I know it sounds like you liked it. I know that I've walked in on bits and pieces of conversations where Bryce and Justin were not fans.
To distill it very quickly, not spoiling it in any way, but it just feels like stretching it out a little bit. I don't know.
Didn't feel that way at all. And again, in a vacuum where I knew no one else's opinion except my wife's, we had a great time. We thought it was fun. We ate it up, watched 7 episodes on July 4th.
Wow.
And then finished it the next morning. And we're both like, that was really great. That was fun. And we had speculations like, I think that insane means this. Then I found out what everyone else thought. So
it is a big spectacle. I mean, that's the thing, is it's kind of gone from being this
little indie ghost story.
Yeah, it doesn't feel maybe as charismatic, but it is still a big spectacle, a big action horror. It's action horror instead of horror.
Yeah, it really hasn't been a horror story since like the end of episode 6, like
of season 1.
Of season 1. Ever since then, it's been just action. I mean, that's up to. I haven't watched season 3, but I assume they continue that on season 3.
My understanding is that's the case. But
now I do want to mention, I think you should leave the show on Netflix because
welcome aboard, my friend.
Oh my God,
so glad.
This is one where
oh my God,
Ryan
he
told me-
admits.
Now you have to marry your mother-in-law. We did this on Twitter over the weekend, just sending each other
great.
quotes from the show.
Well, Brian said just watch the first, I think it was 5 minutes of this episode. And I watched it and I kept watching because I'm like, this is great. And then I got interrupted and I never went back until a friend of mine, Dave Broadbeck, up at the Podcasters Roundtable that I was at this weekend, mentioned it in some other context. I think on his podcast he mentioned it. Justin Robert Young used clips from it on Politics. So I'm like, you know what? I don't know why. It's not that I've been putting it off. It's just been like I kept forgetting to go find it. So at the airport, I downloaded all the episodes, started watching them, and just blazed through it. Just genius. I am a huge fan of sketch comedy, always have been. So I love that. And it just gave me that feeling of Mr. Show and Upright Citizens Brigade and Kids in the Hall, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Time all going all the way back to Monty Python. Just so good because it gave me that feeling because it wasn't being them. It was being something totally new and different and taking different beats and playing with them. And it's just really funny.
And there are virtually no sketches that overstep their welcome. Like when they're in one note joke, they get in for their one note and get out. Oh, it's so much fun.
And also when you think, oh, okay, they're going to go for this joke, they don't. They'll soft pedal it and then they'll turn into something else. You're like, I didn't see that. And that's the best comedy right there. Bryce, what should we be on the lookout for?
Hey, we got a suggestion from a listener to cordkillers@gmail.com. It writes, I have a suggestion for On the Lookout. The Casketeers is a series on Netflix. The series follows a funeral director and his employees in New Zealand, and they specialize in Pacific Islander funerals such as Maori and Tongan. The people feel genuine, and it just makes us feel good watching it. The second season just released last week on Netflix. Dan, thank you, Dan. Yeah, I watched the first, almost the first 2 episodes before the show. This is a really interesting show because in a lot of ways it is set up like a reality show, like one of those Bravo docudrama, just day in the life shows. But it's at least in the first 2 episodes that I watched, it's very intentional on like how little it shows of like the bodies and the actual ceremonies, right? It feels very reserved in terms of how much it shows of any given client, and so it mixes this very like respectful and detail oriented staff with kind of some humor because they're human beings, and so they have thoughts about their job and their coworkers.
So this is unscripted or scripted?
Unscripted.
Holy cow! Like this feels like something you would expect to be faux unscripted, like scripted but presented as unscripted.
And I've only seen the 2 episodes so far. There was a thing in the second episode about a van that felt maybe a little like, hey, here's a van, deal with it for an episode. That, you know, there's always massaging and that sort of stuff.
Sure.
Yeah,
but
that is unscripted when they do that stuff, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, but it's mixed with the very like emotional and genuine moments of you know, dealing with the different cases that come in, and because it could be very like, oh, you know, this woman got shot. She just got shot last night. We could kind of do a Nightcrawler sort of thing on it, but instead it's very very pulled back, and it feels really respectful to my eyes, and it's interesting to show a lot of the Pacific Islander ceremonies and traditions also.
It reminds me of that one line in the intro to Dirty Jobs where he says, you know, his whole show is dedicated to highlighting the experiences of the people who make civilized life possible for the rest of us, and this is one of those pockets that I think I would like to find out more about the people and the day-to-day life that they experience.
It's very humanizing in that way. So this is called The Casketeers. It is on Netflix. It's not a Netflix original. I think it's a New Zealand show. You can tell when they cut to commercial break. But 2 seasons are on Netflix. You may have to check something like justwatch.com to see where it is in your neck of the woods.
I realized I only said the sketch show name once. I Think You Should Leave is the name of the sketch show. That is also on Netflix.
Oh, I was taking that as a direction. I was going to leave right after.
Yeah.
I Think You Should Leave is the name of the sketch show. I tried to say that as fast as possible. If you got something we should be on the look for email us, cordkillers@gmail.com. And while you're in your email, look for an email from me, which you will get if you have subscribed to the Free Tom newsletter at freetomnewsletter.com. It keeps you up to date on all the writing I'm doing, any appearances I might be making, has links to all the episodes of all the podcasts that I do every week. If you're like, how do I keep up with all of that, Tom? Well, this is it, freetomnewsletter.com. And the best part is you can just respond to that email if you have something to say to me, and I'll email you right back. It's the best way to keep in touch with what I'm doing. If you're interested, freetomnewsletter.com. It's absolutely free. Let's move on to the front lines.
Front lines.
Netflix is setting up a production hub at the historic Pinewood Shepperton Studios. A fantasy movie called The Old Guard with Charlize Theron and Chiwetel Ejiofor will be the first production there. Pinewood Group says that it is opening 22 new sound stages to accommodate all the movie-making business it's been getting, not just from Netflix, but loads of others as well.
In related news, Tom Merritt is a super cool bro and co-host because he made sure to take the first story so Brian didn't have to pronounce Chiwetel Ejiofor. Did I get it right?
But then you did it anyway. Look at you, taking a bullet for the team. Good job.
Mischief.
Hold on. Pinewood Studios, you know, like Star Wars was made there, right?
Oh, I didn't know that.
And The Third Man was made there. And like, just go look it up in Wikipedia. You'll realize Lord of the Rings had some shoots there. Like every movie you've loved has done some work at Pinewood. It's incredibly historic. So it's kind of a big get for Netflix. That's why they're making such a big deal.
That's amazing.
All right, now I'm giving you something to pronounce.
Yeah, Mischief, that's MSCHF, Internet Studios, has published a Chrome extension called Netflix Hangouts. It puts what you're watching on Netflix in the lower right corner of 4 video boxes. The other 3 fake conference call participants. We're
like
seeing
fully video too, right?
Yeah, we're seeing the return of the boss key. So it's like while you're there, you're just in the middle of a Google Hangout.
It's hard to make that spreadsheet key look real these days, so they did this instead.
That's brilliant. I love it.
Yeah. Although, honestly, if you see like the big mind flayer, you know, walking through one of the keys because you're watching Stranger Things, I'm not sure that they won't catch you, but it's funny anyway. Quibi keeps looking better on paper. BBC Studios is the latest investor in the company. Here are the other investors in Quibi: Disney, Sony, Warner Brothers, Viacom, MGM, E1, Liberty Global, Alibaba, and ITV. Now, if you are paying attention, last week we told you BBC's Natural History Unit signed on to make a nature show for Quibi, and they followed that up with actually putting money into Quibi. And if you haven't heard us mention it before, Quibi plans to release video series in shorter chapters, so an episode might be around 10 minutes or less, and a whole series will tally up to a couple hours, coming next year.
This is such an enigma to me. It smells like Vessel all over again, but it seems like something a bunch of olds would think the youngs would want. But another part of me says, if you're gonna bet, if you have a $25 chip and the roulette wheel of business, do you bet on people having longer attention spans or shorter attention spans? I don't know what to make of Quibi.
Every instinct in me says this can't work. This won't work. Nobody wants this. You don't hear people out there going, you know what I need is a Netflix with shorter shows. Like, that's just not something you hear people say. But they've convinced so many people to invest in it. They've convinced so many advertisers to pre-buy ads on it. They've convinced so many talented directors and actors to make shows for it that it does make me doubt myself. Like, well, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just don't see it.
Deadline reports that Disney TV Studios is floating a new compensation model for broadcast cable and TV series. Among the changes would be paying people, particularly talent, fixed cash amounts that vary based on how long a show runs, how it performs, and how many awards it gets. There would be no profit participation on syndication, which often complicates digital distribution. This isn't new for digital series. Amazon already does something like this, but it would be a huge change for broadcast TV. Warner Brothers TV is experimenting with a similar model. Man, this is a bit more inside baseball than I think we usually get on the show. But in concrete terms, what do you think this means in as far as changes we can expect in programming and how people treat it?
Yeah, so there's a whole rabbit hole to go on about, like, what does this mean for talent? Does this mean that the bigger stars will get less money and the smaller stars will get more money because of the restructuring? And that's all very interesting. But for us, the way it's going to impact us is you won't see shows hop as much. You won't see shows not show up at places because, well, they couldn't get the rights. What this is saying is, where Netflix says we buy a show, we own it, we get to keep it on Netflix forever unless we're buying it from someone else, right? Like Friends. When we make it, it stays here. You're seeing Disney look for that same kind of flexibility. When we make a show for Disney Plus, we want to be able to decide where it goes without having to renegotiate a bunch of back-end points deals with a bunch of people. And a lot of times when you're like, why isn't this show available for streaming? That's why, because it's just too complicated to renegotiate the deals and get everybody on board. So this would be a way to make that happen more often.
Do you think there's any amount of this that is fueled with, like, we live in an age increasingly where somebody's brand, social media presence is a valuable commodity, and you want to align incentives so that they want to be constantly creating their own material, promoting it on their Twitter feeds, their Facebooks, their Instagrams, and all that stuff? Or is that so much white noise in the background of the real reasons to do this?
I think that's a separate thing. I don't think it's white. I think it's more than white noise, but I think it's sort of a separate issue. This to me seems particularly about flexibility in distribution. One of the reasons The Expanse left Sci-Fi is Sci-Fi couldn't figure out how to make the streaming work. And it was either give it to somebody else and not make enough money off of it, or not be able to, or have to pay to stream it because they didn't own everything. And so you're going to see a lot of moves like this one that say, we just want to make it easier that when we make a show, from then on, we get to decide what to do with it. And we don't have a bunch of profit sharing that makes it costly to do things. Sometimes it's not even just about getting people to approve, but have an accountant or a lawyer go through and decide, well, okay, if we put it on Netflix or if we sell it to Warner's new streaming service, who gets paid, right? Like, how do we pay them and who gets paid? That can be costly. So getting rid of that is what this is about. The short version of the story is this will make it easier for companies to figure out where they can put their streaming stuff. And that means you'll have more access to stuff. Netflix says it will no longer show characters smoking in its TV-14 or PG-13 productions, except in cases of factual accuracy. So if it's a documentary, they're not going to take it out. It will also try to avoid showing smoking or e-cigarette use in adult-oriented projects, quote, unless it's essential to the creative vision of the artist or because it's character-defining, say historically or culturally important. The Truth Initiative has been campaigning for this, saying that 12 of the 13 most popular TV shows among people aged 15 to 24 prominently feature smoking, including Amazon's The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel and Hulu's Gap Year. Of course, Stranger Things also.
This is dumb, and I hate it. But it's their company. They get to run it however they want. It's a lagging indicator, not a leading indicator. They're acting as though they're single-handedly taking on smoking. In fact, the Truth Campaign has been running this for decades, getting to this point. It's very easy to hop on a bandwagon that's headed out of town. Smoking is at an all-time low of popularity in my lifetime. Oh, how brave of you, Netflix, to hop on that rails out of town.
I feel I looked at this as like, Truth Initiative finally wore them down. Like, okay.
I
And
guess.
Netflix is like, fine,
I don't know.
fine.
It all seems dumb to me. Movie Pass shut down services to customers as of July 4th at 5 a.m., according to CEO Mitch Lowe. To shut down the shutdown will last several weeks to complete work on a new app. During that time, the service won't accept any new signups or charge existing customers. Subscribers who have already paid for the month will automatically be credited for downtime once Movie Pass resumes service. So TLDR, Movie Pass. Just killing it like always. Good. Okay.
And it being themselves.
You know what I saw about this is that they disabled the app, right? So you can't check into movies. The app is the only way you can cancel the service.
Yeah.
You can't do it online.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Or if I imagine there would be a very long Twitter DM.
But
or
they're
email.
not charging you.
Oh, great.
Yeah, they're just holding you for hostage until they've fixed the app.
Because like I would cancel the app even if they cut it off for 2 weeks during July 4th weekend. That would be the time I'd like to cancel the app. But
look, man, I've given up trying to understand Movie Pass a long time ago.
It is a cockroach of a service in that it has continued to last. I have no illusions that it's going to make its comeback. But we've followed it this far. I figured we ought to keep seeing it to the end. So let's get to some dispatches from the front. Got another Locast user reporting in. Howard L. from Western Maryland has been using Locast since February and says, while I'm in that market, I'm unable to receive any over-the-air television because of geographic barriers. In other words, he's in the market for Washington, D.C. area television. He just can't get it because stuff is blocking the signal. He says, years ago, my local cable company started charging a local surcharge to bring me the Washington network affiliates. So he switched to DirecTV Now. However, he misses PBS and CW because neither are carried by DirecTV Now in Washington. And now Locast brings him those channels. It took Locast several months to get fully up to speed, but now that most of the startup and ISP issues are worked out, he says, I'm very pleased to give them $5 a month donation for bringing me over-the-air television. And just this past week, I learned of Fitzy TV. That's Fitzy, an application service that is a wraparound aggregator application and DVR service for digital. So Fitzy doesn't sell you anything. They just say, hey, you got a Locast subscription? Log into it, use Fitzy TV, and then we'll act like a DVR for it. And also, kind of like Plex, pull in other services. Not every service is part of it, but you could have more than just Locast. He says, this allows me to record Locast for later viewing. It's not perfect, but I can say it's as good, if not better, than the beta DVR DirecTV Now provided. Fitzy TV is $5 a month for 25 hours of video recording, and larger plans are available at fitzytv.com. It's currently only available for Fire TV and Android, but it is compatible with Chromecast, and they promise an iOS app soon.
And chiming in on our discussion about whether or not it's better to watch a movie in a theater or by yourself, we got an email from Yaru all the way in Malaysia. I love having so many international viewers. It's awesome. He says, I thought I'd chip in the cinema discussion. He says they're 29 years old, millennial, Generation Y, but they really love going to the cinema. Pretty much agreed with everything that that our guest, that was Scott Wilkinson, said. Love the communal experience of watching movies, especially true for movies with a lot of comedy in it. Talks about a particular movie that he watched 25 times in the theater, and his enjoyment, long after you get past the surprise of the storytelling and all that, pretty much was directly proportional to what crowd he happened to be with each time he saw it. So most damning is that he can never experience that kind of recreation alone at home. So this is somebody who will not be chiming in on my idea of renting an individual karaoke style room in the future. However, Steve S., who writes us wonderful missives, says that Brian's metaphor of movies and other media and various mechanisms to downloading units of storytelling was spectacular, to which I say thank you.
Good. We got some balance. Fantastic. Tim wrote in and said, good moment to remind people of after. Oh, no, that was your note to me. Never mind. Tim wrote in and said, thanks to Tom for the rendition of O Canada on the most recent After Talk on Canada Day. After Talk is, of course, only available to patrons. And I regaled Bryce and Brian with a rendition of the Canadian national anthem. Tim then says, I won't nitpick, but I guess by writing this, I am by definition nitpicking. So he starts doing a thing that bothers me, but then is self-aware enough to point out, but I guess I'm doing it anyway. He points out that Canada on February 18th got royal assent to a long push to change the lyrics of the Canadian national anthem from True Patriot Love in All Our Sons command to True Patriot Love in All of Us command. And in fact, change it back. Those were lyrics of the Canadian national anthem previously and had been changed to In All Our Sons command. So as of February, that is the new lyrics, and I did not reflect that change in my singing, and for that, I apologize. Tim says, as a publicly stated monarchist, Tom, you might be interested in a recent episode of The Big Story on Frequency Network entitled When the Queen Dies, What Happens Next? It was a good general discussion on what happens once the inevitable happens to the Queen, who for most of the planet and roughly 85% of Canadians is the only monarch they have ever known.
Mike Mills wrote us as well, and for all I know, maybe we talked about this at some point in the past, but he says that we've talked about libraries have wonderful content in the form of books, audiobooks, newspapers, movies, and even music. He noticed that his local library, the monthly update email, that you can access Acorn TV through their website. So I don't know if that's new or something that we talked about before, but a good reminder that there's an awful lot that just having a library card. I know over on After Things and Weird Things, we've talked about the fact that I believe lynda.com, you're able to get access to a whole bunch of that through your local library. Definitely check out what you already have access to watch what you want when you want on whatever device you please.
Yeah, there's a service called Hoopla that works with the LA Public Library it's great for music. TV shows and movies on it are not so great, but music and audiobooks has great selection of audiobooks too.
Cool.
Finally, Steve S. says that Brian is smart.
I think that was a second copy. I put it back. I meant to cut and paste.
You just wanted me to read it again because it's Stephen S. says that you're smart.
I will never tire of hearing you say that Brian is smart. Thank you, Steve
Brian?
S.
You are smart.
Not as smart as the 5 folks who write us at cordkillers@gmail.com with your suggestions of everything from what we should be watching to stories we should check out or interesting responses to questions that we have. Tom, that was a good episode. We did good.
It was. Yeah. I love this episode. You should go watch it again, folks. You can find it in your podcast feeds or on demand at twitch.tv/nightattack. We're also live on diamondclub.tv as well. Either place, Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. We'll kill you again next week with our chords. Wait, that's not how it works.
It's close enough. Yes. Hey guys, Brian and Tom here, and it's just the same old message at the end of the credits, just like always.
That's right, Brian. Nothing new here except your name showing up.
Oh my gosh,
because
I've got a
you
name.
just supported us on Patreon.
Yeah, all those $5 donors. Look at that. That's your name in pixels. We're gonna make you famous, kid. Put your name in pixels on the
classic
internet.
names in there, but some of you are new. Some of you aren't there. It's sad. What can they do, Brian?
I mean, they could go to patreon.com/cordkillers and pledge $5 an episode and be one of these amazing people, like this one.
Amazing.
Oh, look at that name right there.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.